axle is mangled. Just twisted to junk. Savage annihilated that thing. And here's the body.
Blood niggas, essays, Asians, Dominicans, Puerto Rican, white boys, Jamaicans, Latin kings, recycling, vice lords, Haitians. All these motherfuckers been patiently waiting since the...
Hey all, it's Nitro Nerds here, and this is the second video in our new series called So You Got a New Savage? Now what the hell are you gonna do? Or something to that. We'll come up with a better name, I'm sure, as the series progresses. The important thing is to understand the intent. And we've morphed right now into what you might consider the holy trinity of Nitro RC. The three main pillars: durability, maintenance, performance upgrades. This video, while it's long, it's probably the most important of the entire series in my mind because it's about durability. High level. I'm going to touch on some of the areas that I've employed on my Savage with respect to durability. And next video, we'll talk about maintenance. That's the important thing as well. And then performance upgrades. So for those of you that might not want to watch the details and understand how things work and understand why things break and all that good stuff, I'll still hook you up. Here's the 1-minute version of items that I think you might consider, and some that I can pretty much urge you not to even waste your money on. All right, durability items that I can recommend: beefier suspension blocks, captured hinge pins, aluminum shock towers, aluminum servo horns, heavy-duty servo savers, roll bar, better roll bar, thread lock, of course, a customized antenna, and a better bumper. Items that I would say, well, I'm going to show you in this video how they don't work. How about that? Oh, would be, let's see, heavy-duty cup joints, steel spur gear, 17 millimeter hex wheel hubs, aluminum shock bodies and or aluminum shock caps, bulletproof differentials, bulletproof anything really, steel brakes, RPM A-arms, and the effervescent tie rod eliminator. Now, as I noted, for those that want to learn cool things such as how the plastic shock towers can actually cause you to strip your spur gear, let's get cracking. And it was weird things that was occurring as well. So I'm talking actual like engine problems, tuning issues, things such as that you would never ever equate with ass diving or nose diving your Savage. Here's a perfect example. Here's the truck landing on its ass, and then it shuts off. After I started it, I noticed that the engine ran really, really rich. Upon further inspection, I noticed that. Now here's the pipe. If you go back and look at the picture, you can see clearly right here where it was hit. Consequently, the one-way bearing started slipping, and again, bad things happen. What's causing it? Well, let's walk through a typical nosedive. What will happen is, normally, face down. There is a problem here though. And what happens is, at least from a nosedive and an ass dive, these bumpers don't hold up. They're very flimsy. Consequently, the tires hit, the arms spread backwards, okay, and it will continue on through. We're going to get into all this when I talk about the parts. But just understand the impact as it traverses through the vehicle is going to cause collateral damage. So my intent here is to understand that first, there are part problems that are not, the parts themselves are not protecting as they should. Now we get into design problems with the truck, okay? So one of the big problems that occurs are hinge pins coming out and or bending. Usually they will come out. Now, how to explain this? If you have protection here up front, that's not going to happen. Okay, so there's different ways you can do this. You can attack the root cause, or you can work around the end result. Now what I've done here is both. So I've attacked the root cause, and, oh, by the way, as an extra layer of security, of extra layer of protection, the root cause, I've switched that around. So hinge pins, let's talk about them. You've got two types. You've got upper hinge pins and lower hinge pins. All right. Now, the reason they fall out, the upper ones, is because they're not captured anywhere. Nothing is stopping them. They're free floating. Okay. Now these bumpers right here, they have these little stops on them, you can see. And this is what's used, if you can believe it, to stop these hinge pins, which you can't see. I've got them covered actually. These hinge pins, this is what's used to prevent them from coming out. I'm telling you, if you get grimy with your Savage, it's not going to hold it. Now, you might have heard something called the zip tie mod. All it is you get a zip tie, you tie it around these two arms right here to hold them in. That's it. I did it the first time I got off my Savage. Hinge pins went a-flying. So, durability upgrade, you can get little covers right here. Now, this came with the sway bar kit. These covers right here. And you can see I'm not even running a sway bar on the front. I am in the rear. I think nowadays you can get these covers without the sway bar kit, but you need something to cover these hinge pins, else they will come out, the upper ones. Now, the lower ones, this is a little bit more complex, but here's what's happening. You remember when I talked about this bumper not holding up? It's mainly because of this bump skid right here. Look at this. Are you kidding me? Everybody thinks flex is good. Tell me how the job here is to protect, how is that good? I mean, I can do it with my hands. What do you think is going to happen when this thing, 15 feet in the air, boom, right? Okay. Understand that. Now, the way that the lower hinge pins are protected are these little plastic stops right here. So essentially, I'll show you, you've got something like this, all right? Well, I can tell you, because it took me, I went through 3 or 4 of these. Every time hinge pin came out, I realized, oh, see right there? These plastic stops are going to give. They're going to give, they're going to give, they're going to give. So that's a problem. So what do we do about it? Now, a lot of guys might come out with some kind of, really shady type, if they figure it out, some shady type of workaround for here. But in my mind, what I'm going to do about it, the way I approached it was figure out what the hell is causing this to even move to put pressure on here so these can give. You see where I'm going? It's those 3 levels of why. Why did that happen? Because of this. Well, why did this happen? Because of that. Well, why did that happen? Etc. So, what's causing these right here, the pins, to move, putting pressure on here, to if you want to continue adding layers of durability, there's something else you can do to perfect and protect your front and rear. And that is, well, some words of wisdom that I heard way back in the day that stuck with me, and it's proven out to be true. And it's because I heard it from someone that I very much respect in this hobby, and I know he knows what he's doing. And that is, protect and lock down the front and rear of your vehicle. You're going to save yourself a lot of durability issues. In other words, one thing you can do is get yourself a quality bumper. TBR Racing is who I would recommend. They make really good bumpers. They're this one here is actually for the rear, and it goes like this. You can see it's got a Delrin stiffener right here in it. I mean, without it, look at it. I mean, this is, I don't want to squeeze it, but that's just not going to happen. So, and you can get one very similar to this for the front. Shock towers. For whatever reason, people think that these plastic ones are good. Yet no one has been able to give me a reason why other than they flex, which makes no sense whatsoever. You don't want them to flex, all right? It causes so many issues. I'll give you an outlandish one that it causes, all right? And I'll walk you through how it happens. Did you know that this can cause you, the stock tower, front or rear, can cause you to strip your spur gear? Now I'm going to preface this by letting you know that when I say I know this, I sacrificed all these different engine plates, spur gears, everything to prove it out. So you have to understand, I'm not up here telling you things that I don't know about. This is what I've experienced, and I'm pretty good at data analysis. I'm pretty good at proving things out. And in my mind, at least, I've proven it out. Believe me, don't believe me, I don't really care. But I'm telling you what I've experienced in hopes that it helps you. Excuse me, no point me going through this and knowing about some things and not helping people makes no sense. So here's what happens. These nylon ones, these plastic ones, they don't hold. So what they do is they bend a part in here. It's called a joint post. And this is in your bulkhead. This is your bulkhead. And it's essentially a metal rod that goes through here. Okay, what happened was mine got bent and it went at an angle. Now notice something about these shock towers. They have holes from the front and the rear. The design of this shock tower was one that had 4 shocks. This way, and this way. You've seen probably those 4-shock Savages. Well, with that comes bracing. You can, shocks on both sides, braces it. The newer Savages with the big bores have just 2, which is nice. It handles better that way. That's the way I want to keep it, at least. So now we're left with a shock tower that wasn't designed for being deformed, because that's what happens. It gets deformed. And it took the joint post with it. That tweaked everything. It bent the stock chassis. And the next time I put on my engine, took it out, drove a little bit, and I noticed that when I jumped, when I landed, it was stripping gears. That became very consistent. It turns out that with the tweaked chassis, it was off maybe 2.5, 3 millimeters. The engine plate was a little bit slanted because when I tightened the engine plate, it was bending with the chassis. So in other words, I figured out it was engine plate, I put a new one in, boom, happened again. Then the engine plate was bent, the new one was bent. So how does a bent engine plate cause you to strip your spur gear? Because my mesh was good, my mesh was perfect. Well, long story short, it was hitting the brake disc right down here. And it was only doing so upon landing, and because it would come up and it would hit it, and the clutch bell would get hot and melt the gears. Like I said, it took me about 3 months to figure it out, and about another month of testing, proving it out. And that is both the, what you'd call, I guess, the negative test case, putting it in a situation saying, all right, with these, it happens, and with aluminum, carbon fiber, something that's rigid, it doesn't happen. Now, this is just one of the things that the rigid shock tower will help on this vehicle. But I'm not going to, spend the whole video on that. Now, there's arguments against an aluminum versus this nylon. I can only think of one, and that's weight. Other than that, people will argue against an aluminum saying, well, they can bend. And that's true. That's absolutely true. Just like carbon fiber can break, although I have yet to break a single piece of carbon fiber. Just like plastic can become deformed, aluminum towers can bend. And you notice that all the top vehicles have either aluminum or carbon fiber. And people aren't going around bending them. They can bend, of course. Well, you know, plastic can twist. That makes no sense. That argument makes no sense whatsoever. The chassis can bend, but it's not problematic. But I can tell you a whole lot of shit that's problematic about the nylon ones. So that's my opinion on the shock towers. Anyways, other durability item, a better roll bar. The stock one, that little plastic thing, well, best way I can put it is very early on, probably the first few times this thing landed on its lid, it was like, oh, it landed on its lid. Oh, look, the engine protector doesn't protect the engine because my cooling sink was bent all to hell. Another durability upgrade would be an aluminum servo horn. If you're going to get one for steering. Now, I run both, but I can tell you that eventually the stock one is going to wear out. It's just going to strip is what will happen. So, happened to my neighbor, and he had a pretty low rent servo, but what happened was one time he took the horn off, and when he put it back on, I don't think he put it on correctly. Either way, it stripped. And then we have thread lock. You hear it all the time, and there's a reason. It's definitely needed. If you're new to Nitro, I promise, if you don't thread lock, it's going to come undone. HPI, at least with the Savage, they're notorious for not thread locking all of their screws. I tried to find a pattern. I looked at like 4 different Savages, new ones. And what it seems like is they thread lock every other screw or something. But I can tell you that I've yet to see a Savage, or even hear of a Savage, where all of the screws that should be thread locked are thread locked. Make sure you pay attention to the joint post, because that's metal as well. So it's going to be right here. Your engine plate, any place, metal to metal. Just a little bitty dab. It's going to save you a lot of head. And when you're looking for thread lock, make sure you get blue. It'll be the blue kind is the way to reference it. Now the bottle may be red, but you want blue. Normally it's numbered like 242 or something such as that. And then finally, a precision cut antenna tube. I don't really know any other way to reference that. Let me explain the problem. If the antenna, as is stock, sticks out of the body, okay, so just imagine that we have the antenna sticking out here. When your Savage flips, what will happen is the antenna tube, because there's nothing to protect it, right? So it's essentially falling on the tube, will snap. And when it snaps, what's going to happen is it can fray your wire of your receiver. So it happened to me. I thought it was a freak thing. I bought another receiver. Happened again. I'm a believer now, and I know a lot of people that it's happened to. And you could look at fixing it. It's an expensive mistake, guys. You could look at fixing it, but I heard it's really, really difficult. I mean, I'm not screwing with that. You don't want to screw around with your receivers, right? So all you got to do is just cut it just to where it's about, right to the top, and that's it. It's pretty easy. And to note, what happens when it gets frayed like this? It's not that it just shuts down, but you'll just get some like anomalies, like your range will suddenly be decreased and things like that. It'll essentially behave like it's on a low battery, if you're lucky. All right, so now for some items that I would caution you against spending your hard-earned cash on. These are going to be items that I'm sure a lot of people, in these forums are going to urge you to get, and again, most of the time these people either don't have them or they have them and they don't use them. As an example, this morning I was reading that HPI Savage forum, and somebody noted in his rear cup joint, which are these things right here, he said that he's got some grooves in it. I imagine he's talking something about like that right there. Hopefully you guys can see that. I'm thinking right about there, okay? Of course, the brain trusts come out, and well, you gotta have the heavy-duty ones. You gotta have the heavy-duty ones. And so the guy's like, oh, okay. You got the heavy-duty ones. Now, I was that same guy a while back. Oh, okay. It makes sense, though, if you think about it, right? You have a piece of metal that's giving way. Why not get a stronger one if it's available? So I got it, and that was the result right there. Well, it's got to be a fluke. So I got another set. They come in twos, front and rear. And that's the result right there. So long story short, again, people tell you what they want. They don't work. They're not any more durable than the stock. And I'm not the only one who's experienced that. Take it for what it's worth. Now, I'm going to have another video on how to fix this once and for all, though. But I don't want to get into that right now. Instead, let's move on to other items that might, and look at all the cup joints I've gone through, other items that you probably want to stay away from. A steel spur gear. I'm not going to go into the details, except that if you're stripping spur gears, the last thing in the world you want to do is get a steel one. I have a steel one, completely different. You see, I'm not even running it right now. You don't need it. It is not needed. 17 millimeter hubs, the extensions. I can tell you that from the day I got the Savage, I wanted them. And every time I put tires on, and I put tires on, it seems like twice a day on this thing, I still want them. But I've gone, 13 gallons without them. They're not needed. It's a luxury, absolutely. In fact, in the mail tomorrow, I've got some coming. They're not needed though, guys. Shock absorbers. So, as we all know, Savage comes with plastic ones. Now, I have had one mishap with shocks that if they were aluminum would have been avoided. But that's one out of a lot, right? And all that happened, and I'm going to be accountable for that. But what happened was the shaft actually tore through the bottom of the body, actually the bottom cap. It just like cut through it. The reason the shaft came off of the piston, I can only think I didn't screw the piston on tight enough. I don't know, but that's what happened. Other than that, the shocks, they are what they are. They're cheap as hell. You can get a set for like $3 to $6. Not needed. They just add weight. Another item, bulletproof diffs. Excuse me, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, Savage owners seem to have a lot of problems with their diffs. I'll tell you this, I'm still running the same differentials that came with the truck. I have not had a single problem. I have changed the oil inside of the differentials, meaning I've serviced them, cracked them, whatever. Not a whole lot, maybe 20, 30 times. Not a single issue, guys. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm not running it hard enough. Maybe I'm not running it fast enough. I don't know. But again, my personal belief is that there's just user error that's happening with people. And when we get into the performance upgrade part, I'll go ahead and caution you, don't jack with it unless you have. All right, next up, steel brake disc. You know what? In fact, if you have steel brake disc, get fiberglass, because fiberglass would be the upgrade here. HPI, for whatever reason, I think it's morally wrong actually, counts these as an upgrade. But if you look at the description, they talk about, if you want to have bling. Well, they also say that you can do those stoppies. And I guess that's where if you hit the brakes and you can do a front flip, which, I mean, comment below, say I dare you to do it. I can do it all day with the fiberglass. You don't need the steel brakes. They're nothing but headaches. You can see I've got steel brakes on a lot of vehicles, or I had, took them off, put fiberglass on. To me, fiberglass is a definite upgrade over steel. Another one, RPM A-arms, or any aftermarket A-arms. Put it this way. Excuse me, how many people do you know that have ever broken a Savage A-arm? And if they have, I guarantee you it is because of the issues I spoke of earlier, and that being the toe blocks, hinge pins movement, and all that stuff. But if you get your shit right, excuse my language here, the stock ones, once again, these are the original stock. Plus the RPM ones, they don't honor their warranty. It doesn't have a what do you call it, sway bar mount. They bind your suspension. It's a liability. So it's not only is it not an upgrade, it's a liability. And then finally, I mentioned in the last video in this series about the tie rod eliminators. Again, not needed. I mean, I've not had any problems with the tie rods. other than them popping off, but it's a very simple fix, as I noted. Plus, if you are that, if you're into that bling, you can always try to get the bling on like I'm doing here. But that's it. So, gentlemen, there are your durability suggestions. Now, you notice one thing. I didn't necessarily mention really any companies or any parts or anything like that. And that's because the intent here is not to tell you you need this part or you need that part. The intent here is to tell you some of the more problematic areas that you might encounter with your Savage if you get down with it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Next up, I don't know, I'll probably do the differentials, and then the maintenance is going to be a big one. You guys, if you're new to the Savage, I really think you're going to want to watch it, because I'm going to give it its gallon refresh, and I tear it down 100%, build it back up. But there's so many little things to look for, like your step screws, just things you would never ever think about that will wear out. I'm going to show you how to shim the transmission, because it's going to get play, all that good stuff. So, I would say 90% of the wrenching I do on the Savage is maintenance. Thanks so much. Have a great day. One of the things I see is a good amount of play on the steering link, vertical play. So I take it apart and inspect it. I'm able to verify that the screw itself is not moving in the upright. So the problem is definitely in the steering link rod, ball cup. We're going to fix that. I'm also getting horizontal play all up in the Ackerman, So I put a new rod in and pivot ball on both ends there, and pretty much the slop is all gone. All gone. That's actually just the servos moving. One thing about the Savage, it's real easy to get rid of slop.